There's a shift happening in the business world. The hustle, the sell, the push isn't serving us. As business owners, we want real human connection. We want a partnership that means more than a handshake. We want to show up as ourselves and run a business that feels good. We want to go deeper to find solutions, and we dream of a better future for ourselves and our community. Join me as we explore a different approach to business, a more personal way to serve our clients, our team, and ourselves. This is the Soul Side of Business. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Soul Side of Business. I am Ashley with Imagine Images, and I'm your guide to finding a more personal approach to business, ways to serve your team, your clients, and yourself in a better, more human way. I appreciate you joining me today. This is going to be the last episode of season 1. It has been an amazing experience and I've learned so much. However, as I move forward, I'm going to take a break for a little bit, which is it was a hard decision to make because this has been such an fulfilling and really fun experience for me. So in this episode, I'm going to wrap up a couple things I learned, why I'm going to take a break, and hopefully you'll take something away from this episode as well as you think about your own business and where you want to focus your energy moving forward to see your business grow. So the reason I started this podcast is because I do video production, and usually I have a nice slow season, January, February, March, when there's not many jobs happening. So I decided I have everything I need to start a video podcast. It costs me $0. I have all the equipment I need. I can host it right from my website. So why not? Let's try something new. Let's do it imperfectly. Let's learn something. And what I didn't realize that even though it cost me $0, it cost me a lot of time, a lot of energy to learn how to do a podcast. Even though the video editing and that kind of stuff came easy to me, it was the posting, the sharing, how to work YouTube, things like that. So the time that I had invested in this is months of work that I have been working on this podcast. So I shot all the interviews last fall, and even as the time came, I thought I would have everything finished and ready to go in January. I was still working on editing a lot of the things because what I didn't expect is that I would have a full schedule of actual work to do, which was a great surprise to me. I'm so very fortunate to have had jobs, actual paying jobs on my calendar. But having the podcast was like an extra thing to do. And as I was falling behind on it, I realized that I was doing the exact thing that I promised myself, and the thing that I talk about on this podcast is I was hustling, I was pushing, I was not taking care of myself, and I was basically burning myself out trying to get all my paid jobs done, this podcast, and I have a second job that I work that I love so very much. I teach music at a private studio, so I have my students that I'm taking care of. I have a family I have 2 young kids, so I realized that all these pieces, it was so very overwhelming in this time. So as I pause now and I kind of look back at, what did I learn? What could I do differently? I did realize that I was trying to do too many things at one time, and which is just the opposite of what I'm trying to say on this podcast, because your business should feel good. You shouldn't feel overwhelmed. You shouldn't feel rushed. Is there times when you have to hustle? Yes, there is. But I just couldn't envision myself doing this for months on end. Is just not sustainable. And no way I could keep up doing all the things I did. So I'm just going to talk about quick what I learned about podcasting and in business in general. And hopefully you can relate to some of this. Hopefully it'll make you stop and think about your own business. Here's a couple things that I learned while I was producing this podcast. Things always take more time to produce than expected. And I think this goes across the board, in life, in home projects, in your work, especially my type of work, any creative work that you do. You have an idea about how long something's going to take, and you can easily multiply it by 3 or 4 times. It never fails. Most of the time it's good things. Like, I had a couple video projects that wanted more videos done to like piggyback on the same project, but I was not expecting in the time frame that I set aside to allow for those extra things that needed to happen. So that was just something that I have learned. It's just been a consistent for the work that I do. And like I said, even projects that I want to do at home, or things that I want to do for the community, it's things always take longer than expected. So I always just keep that in the back of my mind now, and that is something, an ongoing lesson that I've been learning for some time now, and I think you can relate to that. I also realized that when I set out to do a weekly podcast, for someone who is just starting out, 1 episode a week is a lot of episodes. I had 11 or 12 episodes in mind, 6 interviews and 5 or 6 solo episodes like this one. And to have that out every week when you're just starting, that is so much. And I did not realize that. If I were to restart again, I would shoot to get out maybe once a month. That is plenty, especially when you are first starting. So that is something that I learned, that 1 episode a week is really, really ambitious and a lot of work to keep up, because as soon as you fall behind on one, it's hard to get there, because I try to stay consistent on what day I was posting. I started posting on Wednesdays, and then I was running a little late one week and I posted on a Friday, and that got more engagement. I don't know what it was. It was just the time of day or the amount of people that were online, but posting on Fridays got me more engagement than Wednesdays did. So I kind of switched my schedule to a Friday, but to do that once a week is just, it's a little nuts. So if you're thinking about doing a podcast, start minimal. Start with maybe once a month or once every other week, depending on what you're doing. And then you can always add more. You can always add more from there. I follow a lot of people who do podcasts, whether it's business or personal development, or I'm a podcast listener, so I kind of understand how it goes. And a lot of the folks that I follow post 2 times a week, 3 times a week. Sometimes these people post a little snippet every day. And I think the misconception that I had at first, and maybe a lot of other people have, is that these people are doing it themselves, which I didn't realize. And as I looked into it, I learned that a lot of these people who run podcasts or hosts, they have a whole team behind them. They have a social media person, they have a writer, they have an editor, they have someone that actually does the posting. And in my head, because that's how I work, is that these people are doing it all themselves. And that's just not true in most cases. Most of these high-end podcasters, they have a whole team that's supporting them. And here's me trying to shoot everything, set up the interviews, shoot myself for the solo episodes, edit everything. I do the graphics, I put the music in, I post on social media, I share it. That's all myself. And that's just, it's so much for one person to do. Even though I have the background in a lot of that stuff and it's fun for me, that is just, it's an insane, it's a whole full-time job to do all that yourself. So when I looked into these bigger name people of who I follow, I realized that when you're at that level, you need a team to hold it together. And that's why it looks so well done and so professional and it's so on time. They just have a well-oiled machine and they have people under them that help them get this stuff done. And that's just something that if I continued with this, I would have to have help with it. I would have to have help. I would have to learn how to ask for help. I would have to give a little bit of control up and maybe hire someone for a couple hours to help me with this. So that's just something to keep in mind, that when you see people, when you're following people doing podcasts or on social media, remind yourself that they probably have some help, whether it's paid help or someone to help keep their house clean while they work. There's many different ways that you can get help so that you have more time to do things. But that's how most of these people succeed, is that they have help. So keep that in the back of your mind, and I will too. The other thing that I learned during podcasting is that the successful podcasts, the ones that really hit it big, have been around for a long time. The podcast market, it's just flooded. There's so many things, especially since COVID, people really stepped up how many podcasts are out there. People created a lot of podcasts while they were at home, and that's wonderful. I think it's so cool that anybody could have their own show. Like, for someone who has a TV background, you would have to get a show on a network station or a cable station, and it's not for everybody. But a podcast, anybody could do it, really. Anybody can have their own show, which I think is really cool. But now there's a lot of people who have shows, and in order to start your following, especially if you're starting from scratch, it takes a long time. It takes a lot of painstaking work. It takes a lot of sharing, promoting, networking. And as with anything that I'm learning, if you stick with it through time, it does grow and you are successful, but it takes a minute. So I realized that if I were to stick with this podcast and grow it the right way, do all the research, learn the little tips and tricks to posting and sharing, figuring out what works and what doesn't work, I know that if I stick with it long enough, it would be successful. Successful meaning, probably not, I wouldn't measure it in followers. I would measure it in how many people are engaged and how many people are getting things out of it, and if people are calling me to help them with their jobs. So that's kind of the idea of the podcast. Also, to create a community of like-minded people. I would have liked to seen more maybe community involvement or events pop up, or a discussion board, things like that. Just more thought-provoking things. But starting out, I got hardly any engagement. I can see, I get a decent amount of views each time. For me, I was happy if even one person watched it. But in order to get to the level of success that a lot of these other podcasts, they've been going for 5, 8, 10 years. And they have, tens of thousands of followers, and they produce content every day. So I know that if you just stick with something long enough, you will get there. And I know this because even in the 11 episodes that I've done, I have gotten faster at editing. I've gotten better at speaking in front of the camera. I was really, really bad the first couple episodes. I had to do many takes, and editing was just awful because I would cut things out and move it around, and I just didn't have a flow. Now I'm much better and feel more comfortable at sitting in front of the camera and speaking how I'm, what I want to say. And this process has gotten a lot faster. Same with the editing, because I am getting better at shooting. The editing goes a lot faster. So I have seen improvements in myself in these 11 episodes. So I know that if I stuck with it, I would get even better, faster. I would get better at posting, learning. I'm sure I screwed up certain ways on how to share it the proper way, whether you should share a video or do a reel or a link. It's a lot of learning involved, and I'm sure I screwed it up mostly. I didn't maximize the sharing on social media, and that would take time to learn. But in the last 11 episodes, I have certainly gotten better at it. So I know that if I stuck with it longer, that it would work and it would be successful. However, I am also being honest with myself and realizing that I am being stretched too many different ways and I have too many irons in the fire. And as a solopreneur, someone who works with myself, I have to really focus my energy on what actually gets results, what brings in work, what gets me new client relationships, new partnerships, because that's the ultimate goal, is to make more connections in the community and being able to get more jobs that align with what I want to do. So when I looked at every single thing I do, the podcast was kind of the thing that was not really showing the results right now. And I just realized that going forward, I just need to kind of focus and zero in on a couple things to do, just to do less, but do these things better. So in closing, I just want to say thank you for anyone who has stuck with me and took the time to sit and watch or listen to my podcast. I really do believe that what I am saying in here is needed and something that is very important, especially for small business owners, because a lot of times we can really get carried away and get involved so tightly with our business that we forget to take care of ourselves. Our client relationships may suffer, our team relationships may suffer, and just to have a more holistic approach to business is a very healthy thing, and we don't talk about it terribly much. So I think that just switching the mindset for a couple things, how our society is so bent on production and efficiency, and that in a human life, it's not always going to be perfect like that. So I think this is a conversation that we need to carry on, whether we're meeting on one-on-one networking events or just meetings or presentations. I feel like that is something as moving forward, the shift in business is going to bring that conversation into light a little bit more. And I think that's really important. I appreciate all the guests that I had on my podcast, the time that they took. I hope that I showed them in a good, authentic light so that they can share, because I truly believe everyone I had on the podcast is just wonderful people and they have a lot of good things to say, and I really truly appreciate how they run their businesses. So I hope that you got a chance to hear what they had to say and take some of the tidbits that they mentioned to apply to your own business, because I think that they're getting a lot of it right, and I would just appreciate the opportunity to bring them into the spotlight a little bit and to share their businesses, especially local businesses. Sometimes you don't even realize that these people are around, and the more exposure helps them, helps me, helps everybody, and we can have a healthier community if we can support our small local businesses. So I will leave you with that. In closing, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate all the likes, the views, and the shares. This is Ashley from Imagine Images signing off with the Soul Side of Business.